From the land of conjurers flying through the internet to your device like a UAP, hauntingly unexplained and downright weird, this is the witching hours, and we are ready to take off in the flash of an eye. Good evening to one and all, wherever and whenever you are listening to this program. I am Johnny the Frost, and joining me, as always, is the medium Jenny Lee. Jenny, how are you doing?
I think I'm okay.
You think you're okay? That's
Yeah.
good.
It was a hairy drive home today, but I'm
Yeah,
okay.
we had the spring storms, right?
Yeah,
Our first
started
official
already.
spring storm.
Yeah, happy
I
spring,
guess official
everybody.
spring. Yeah. So,
Woohoo.
yeah.
If you live in the northern hemisphere. Otherwise, what is it, fall?
Yeah.
Happy
Yeah, I would
fall.
guess so, yeah. Yeah, a good soaking. So, all those, flowers and all that stuff,
Yeah, they all
we
need
can
the
use it.
water.
So it's good. Welcome in everyone. It's great to have you with us tonight. We have a wonderful show. We are going to talk about a lot of interesting things tonight. So we're looking forward to the program. Just to give everybody a heads up for what we have coming up in the future. Well, things are going to be a little haywire. Looks like we might. So tonight is episode 98.
Ah,
98.
yeah.
I think Sunday night we are going to do an impromptu episode.
So
Episode
we can sneak in 99.
99. So Sunday night we're going to have an extra episode because next Thursday,
Because
we're going to be
Sunday
joined by
night, Mark Connor
Mark
Brooks
Hunter Brooks
can
for
be
episode
100.
episode 100. So,
Woohoo!
quite an achievement, I think, considering we were like, man, we got 3 or 4 of these things. I wonder,
Yeah,
we got to keep going.
here
And
we
here we
are.
are 3 years later. So,
100 episodes.
yeah, 100 episodes. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to have a lot of fun with Mark Hunter Brooks. We're going to talk about what he's been up to, and we'll be talking about the quantum world, the paranormal, and all those wonderful things. After Mark Hunter Brooks, we're going to have Dennis Eslock on, who is running the cabin on 360, which is a
Oh, yay.
cabin in a haunted battlefield, a Civil War battlefield that we're going to be talking with the week after, joined by Heidi Kemper, another one of mediums that we met at the Hanover Tavern Paracon. And then we're going to finish that up in the month of April with Ron Iacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez, who are, well, we're going to talk about the Staticom. I've talked about that a little bit on the show.
Mhm.
So if we had any questions about these technological devices that we're using for ghost hunting, this is the couple to talk to. And they help develop all of these, the Staticom, which is like kind of like a spirit box. We'll get into it on that show,
Yeah. Mhm.
paranormal investigation. So that's what we have coming up on the show. So Jenny, are you want to get weird?
Always.
All right. Well, let's go ahead, I guess, and start off with our weird news. Okay, we're going to start tonight. NASA story number 1: NASA astronauts return after unexpected 9 months in space.
Thank
NASA
goodness.
astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore have finally returned to Earth. The two have planned to stay just a week at the International Space Station. I mean, could you imagine just packing 1 week's of clothes and then you're in space for 9 months? When they launched on the first crewed flight of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft in June,
They're just going to have to throw them underwears away.
instead, they wound up staying at the orbiting lab for more than 9 months. At long last, the astronauts have splashed down after having journeyed back to Earth inside a SpaceX Dragon capsule, along with NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov.
All
Williams
4 of
and
them were
Wilmore,
in that little tiny thing.
yeah, left the
Holy
space station
moly.
at 1:05 a.m. Their return closed out an unusual and dramatic chapter of spaceflight history, which began last year when Williams and Wilmore ran into problems with the Boeing's vehicle's thrusters as it was docking to the space station. In the end, NASA decided to bring the Starliner back to Earth in September without anyone on board. The two astronauts, meanwhile, stayed at the space station and synced up their return with Hague and Gorbanov, who arrived in September for a roughly 6-month mission.
Wow.
I guess the good thing is they've had people come back and forth there, so they were probably able to bring extra supplies and stuff like that.
Yes.
Because there's people who left and they were just like, okay, bye guys. Like, well,
Yeah.
like we're just gonna hang out here. So good to see
Yikes.
that they made it back home safe.
Yeah.
We've been
I'm so
covering that
glad
story since it happened.
that they're back safe. I don't know if anybody saw any video or pictures of that capsule. Man, it was burnt all to hell and coming
Yeah.
in through the atmosphere. Scary stuff, man. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, that's we've talked about.
I can't ride in the car and look at my phone at the same time. So there's no way. The whole inside would just be covered in vomit. I'd be like, sorry guys.
You can't drive the car and look at the phone at the same
No,
time.
we
There's a lot
can't
of people who
ride
do
in the
that.
car.
I was riding behind a guy today who was a guy. Story.
Anyway,
Well,
story number 2.
I wouldn't wanted to say because like I don't even know if I could go to space. Like I would want to go to space, but I have a pretty bad fear of heights.
Yeah, you'd be scared.
And I've heard from astronauts that is one thing that hits when you look down in space, even though you're weightless, is like the heights thing. So if I were to go up there and then I was stuck there for 9 months, I guess that'd be a good way to get over my fear, right? If you're just stuck there for 9 months, like either you die of a heart attack or figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Story number 2, new Loch Ness Monster search set for May.
Ooh.
Another sizable search for the Loch Ness Monster is
That's somebody we need on here. We need a Loch Ness Monster expert.
Loch Ness Monster person at the famed Scottish site later this year, organized by the Loch Ness Center Tourist Attraction and the Loch Ness Exploration Research Group. The ambitious endeavor will reportedly unfold from May 22nd to the 25th. Dubbed the Quest, the forthcoming search is the third such effort from appearing after a rain-soaked event in 2023 and 2024. As in previous years, members of the public are being called upon to participate by keeping watch at the shore of Loch Ness in the hopes of spotting the monster. Contributing to the effort this year will be the company Little Loch Broom Marine Life, which will deploy a remote operating vehicles into the water of Loch Ness to peer into the proverbial abyss. The highly advanced devices can descend to nearly half the depth of the loch while filming with high-resolution cameras.
Huh. Only half the depth. Ooh.
Yeah. I know. I mean, we have stuff that goes pretty deep, so I'm surprised they just don't have something that can get all the way to the floor.
I don't know. It's pretty
I guess we don't want like a repeat of the Titanic disaster there. So,
well, is it remote controlled or people inside of it?
I guess these will be remote controlled. These are remote operating vehicles. Yeah. So, yeah, there we go. So maybe we'll see. There's been quite a bit of pictures. I don't even think the ones that I saw were from Loch Ness, but I've seen some interesting, photos of lake monsters. So recently.
Yeah.
So. Story number 3, is Jim Morrison still alive, or was his death actually the end? Jim Morrison,
come on now,
was already an icon when he died at the young age of 27 back in 1971. That's what most of us believe about the former frontman from the Doors, I think. But a documentary series makes the argument that Morrison didn't die back then. In fact, Before the End, Searching for Jim Morrison claims that the legendary rock singer hasn't died yet. This documentary, which has been streaming on Apple TV since January, claims that Morrison is still alive and well, living in Syracuse, New York, at the ripe old age of 81. It challenges the official story that Morrison was found dead in a bathtub in an apartment in Paris back in 1971. It was believed at the time that Morrison may have died from a heroin overdose. An autopsy was quickly performed, and he was buried in Paris. The series makes the argument that Morrison faked his death and has been living in Syracuse, working as a maintenance man under the name of Frank.
Frank. Oh, man.
It's like a legit guy, and he has a scar. He has like a scar where Jim Morrison had his mole. So they're saying that
like he had his mole removed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, they thought Elvis didn't die either.
Well, I think this is pretty common at this point. I heard some young children's talking the other day about Tupac not being dead.
Oh yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah. So I think pretty much anyone who has died tragically at a young age that's a celebrity. Well, I guess that's different. Of course, the Paul McCartney one is
That's
like
a
another one.
conspiracy, though.
Yeah, kind of the same thing that he was
Yeah.
replaced. So anyway, another
Hmm.
one. So if you're interested, you can check out the documentary. It's on Apple TV. And then finally,
Frank.
JFK assassination files released, sending history buffs hunting for new clues. More than 63,000 pages of records related to the 1963 assassination of President Kennedy was released Tuesday following an order by President Donald Trump, many without the redactions that had confounded historians for years and helped fuel conspiracy theories. The U.S. National Archives and Records Administration posted its website roughly 2,200 files containing the documents. The vast majority of the National Archives collection of over 6 million pages of records, photographs, motion pictures, sound recordings, and artifacts related to the assassination have previously been released under this order. Larry J. Sabato, director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics and author of The Kennedy Half Century, said it will take time to fully review the records. We have a lot of work to do for a long time to come, and people just have to accept that, he said. Trump announced the release Monday while visiting the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, saying his administration would be releasing about 80,000 pages. We have a tremendous amount of paper. You've got a lot of reading to do, Trump said. The National Archives said on its website that in accordance with the president's directive, the release would encompass all records previously withheld for classification. But Morley said that was released Tuesday did not include 2/3 of the promised files, any of the recently rediscovered FBI files, or 500 Internal Revenue Service records. So still files that were expected to be released aren't in this dump.
Don't we have a guest coming on that is a specialist for JFK stuff?
No.
Oh, I thought we did.
No, I've reached out to a couple of people, but
okay, nobody yet.
Yeah, nothing yet. I would love to have an episode about this. I would love to talk about the assassination, just because there's been so many theories. So I would like to get someone who studied this. It wasn't that long ago. There was someone in Cuba who passed away who had a deathbed confession that he was one of the ones responsible for the assassination of JFK. As retaliation from the Cuban government. But who knows? I mean, at this point, it's interesting though, because Morley is actually talking with Oliver Stone, who had the famous movie in the 90s from JFK. So
I still think it's weird that his name is Morley and that's the cigarette man smoked in X-Files.
Yeah, the brand of cigarettes. Yeah.
Anyway, and that's the news.
That is the news. The news.
And now for something completely different.
Isabeu Maxwell is an intuitive development coach and founder of the award-winning intuitive development course, The Sage Method. In 2005, she went from skeptic to psychic medium as a result of her grandmother appearing moments after she died. Fast forward, and today she has massively healed her own path and now teaches people all over the globe how to access their own strong intuitive abilities and empower themselves. It's the empowerment piece that is most close to her heart. Please welcome to the show, Isabeu Maxwell. How are you doing this evening, Bo?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, welcome in.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And I guess we should start where I guess these things normally start, which is at the beginning. So we kind of talked about in your bio, like this going from being a skeptic to go and then all of a sudden kind of delving into this world. Can you kind of give us a background of kind of how that started and what it was like going from skeptic to, I guess, what we call woo-woo?
Yeah, what we call woo-woo, right? Well, for me, I was 32 and very scientific orientation. I have a degree in mathematics, so that's my bachelor's.
You can't get more logical than that.
You can't get more logical than that. If 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, I don't want anything to do with it.
Exactly.
And I wasn't against anything you could say I just religion and spirituality wasn't in, my family or, day to day. It just wasn't in the day to day. And in addition to that, I would even say that my mom went so far as to say, that psychics and mediums, it's all fraud. Everything is fraud. So I just kind of took that, went with it, lived my life. And then I was 32. My grandmother, who was very much like a mom to me as well, was across the country, and I couldn't get to her, but she was passing. So I was on the phone with hospice when she passed, which I was really grateful for that experience. It was the middle of the day, and I got off the phone after she passed, and my husband at the time and my 2 kids went to the grocery store, get the wine and the chocolate. I was like, thank you so much. And I was standing in my living room trying to figure out, should I book a flight, figure out a way to book a flight because we were really tight financially, or should I fall apart? Like, which one should I do right now? Because I've got my time alone, right? And because my kids were very little. And she showed up in my living room, I'd say about 10 feet in front of me, 70% solid.
Wow.
And directly in front of me. Because we've all seen something out of the corner of our eye. That's, and she was standing there oddly sideways, and she turned and looked at me and winked and smiled and then disappeared.
Wow.
And yeah, you can talk lightly about it, but it wasn't a light moment. It was
not for someone who is completely logical.
Yeah. Completely freaked me out. I yelled something along the lines of, if that was you, don't ever do that again. And I yelled something at myself of like, that's ridiculous. Decided it was extreme grief. Let it go. Didn't say anything to anybody. Went to bed.
So this is a full body apparition.
Yeah. I could see through her. But like I said, it was about 70% solid. And now, mind you, I've been a medium now for 20 years. I've only seen something that strong five times at the most, 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she was being very impactful. The next morning, my husband at the time said, I had the most realistic dream about your grandmother last night, and this is what she was wearing. And he described it to a T of what she was wearing in the living room the day before.
Wow.
Yeah, so that kind of wigged me out a little bit. And I was so far away from spiritual circles, and I was so consumed in the circles of people in, science and finance and stuff like that, that I decided I wanted to prove it. Yeah, I'm going to scientifically prove if this is really her, right? And I thought, okay, I need to find somebody that can tell me about this ghost stuff. And the only person I knew was a Tai Chi instructor that I had hired once at a company to run a class. So I went and met with him, the nicest guy in the world, and he treated me with much kindness, maybe when I didn't deserve it in the beginning. And because I remember going up to him saying, "You're the weirdest guy I know. Can you help me?" And he was like,
as you probably know now, weird people are used to that.
Yes. And I'm ashamed to say it, but I got to tell you the truth of what happened, and this is where I was at, because obviously when you open up and you follow different paths, whether it be paranormal or spiritual, you learn so much, and you're connected to so much more empathy and so much more compassion that you really start to figure some things out. So today I would not approach someone like that, but that's what I did. And he was like, I got you, it's fine. So he started working with me with pendulum work and yes and no intuition. It took about 4 months, and then I vaguely saw her again. And then I started to open up the communication from there. Told a friend told a friend, did a reading for a friend's friend because her dad came through. And then the next thing I knew, I'm doing more and more and more readings, turned into a full-time intuitive, and worked with one of my guides to hone my intuition. And now I'm here teaching people to do the same thing.
Wow.
I'm the poster child of, like, if I can do it,
you
can do it.
Well, it's really interesting because this is something we've talked a lot about on the program. I don't come from quite as logical of a background as you do, the math and science realm. I'm a historian guy, but there's still like, you have to have the evidence, and like in my field, it's like you still have to have something to back up what you're saying. And in this world, it can be really difficult to get things that just aren't circumstantial. But like we talked about before, it's hard to get the physical evidence, but once you've had your own personal experience, it kind of is hard to get away from it. But I really do think, I mean, I think you agree with me, Jenny, because we've talked about this quite a bit on the show. But that's the next step. I don't think it's impossible. I don't think that we're going to go far into the future and never be able to link this with science. I think there is a
It's
scientific
happening already.
background to this. It's
Yeah.
just a process to figure it out.
Yeah.
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 And I'm with you. I was so hungry for proof that I can tell you the day that I committed to this process and said, okay, I believe it. It was about 6-7 months in. I was using the pendulum from that super nice, even though I called him weird in the beginning, guy. And I was doing yes and no questions. And now when you do yes and no questions, it takes a long time to get a message. But I recall I had one day where I was just myself. I didn't have kids in tow. I was running errands, and I remember sitting there in my car, and I said to my grandmother, I said, I can't keep doing this. I have 2 small children. I don't believe it. I think I'm making up everything that you're saying because everything's so generic, and I just can't do this. I'm going to need to go get help if this isn't real. So please just do something. And a couple hours later, I'm driving. I feel a rush. Like I know she's around, pulled over, did the 20 questions, did the yes and no questions. It took like 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And the message was very specific. It said that my mom was going to call me. She was going to be in need financially, but that I wasn't going to be the one to help her. A friend would. And I said, that's a message. It was like one of the first ones. Maybe an hour later, my mom called and she's like, sweetie, I'm in Vegas and they won't take my card anymore. So I need you to go get cash out of your bank. That's how long ago this was. Go get cash out of your bank and bring it to mine. And then let me know when it's done. And I was like, okay. And it wasn't a far stretch still though,
Mhm.
because I had helped her in the past. So I'm like, nope, this has happened, before. So this isn't a
Mhm.
far. Went and got the cash, pulled into her bank, and she called again and said, hey, don't worry about it. My friend Lisa wired me the money.
Oh, there you
And I
go.
just went, okay, because that's one thing that had never happened before. I was always the one that helped.
Mhm.
And that was the one where I went, I'm in. And then the minute I said I'm in, and I'm hoping that science catches up with what I'm going to describe here. But the minute I said I was in, proof. And I was like, wait a minute, do you have to believe first? And then then stuff starts happening and there's truth to it. I'm
Pretty
sure
much.
you've heard the studies where they've brought skeptics into ghost hunts and they get
Mhm.
far less,
Mhm.
they get far less evidence. So I'm on board with you on that one. I'm really looking forward to the science kind of backing this stuff up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing too, I feel like is it's really easy if you're a skeptic because I've been in this boat too. I'm a Gemini, full disclosure. Um, so I'm constantly kind of at war. Like I'm a true believer and a skeptic at the same time. And even for me, it's very difficult because sometimes I'll have something happen. I'll have something happen, but I just try to play it off, and like I'll forget about it, Bo.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll actually forget that it even happened. Like cognitive dissonance. Like I'll just be like, oh, that didn't happen. And then I'll remember it back later. Like I remembered it back later, and then it was like, oh yeah, that thing happened. That's exactly what it was. Like, and so I can only imagine that if I'm doing that, there's other people, I'm not the only one that this is happening a lot. People are having experiences and they just kind of explain it away
Yeah, in
without
the
a good
beginning.
explanation.
No, exactly. In the beginning, so I opened up almost 20 years ago now. And back then, when someone say, what do you do? And I'd say I'm a medium, back then pop culture hadn't really caught up,
Mhm.
right? Right. So they'd say, well, what's that? And I'd explain it. And they'd say, I don't believe in any of that. And then
Mhm.
they would follow it up with, but there was this one time.
Exactly. Oh, we talk
Right?
about that a lot on here. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And it's like, I get it. I get it. And I deep dove into that. And it's what I think, just my personal opinion, is our brain patterns, the synapses, they fire in habits, they fire in habitual patterns. And we can have a wow moment happen.
Mhm.
And 2 days later, we're back to sort of a disbelief state.
Mhm.
And I think when you take steps to put it in front of yourself every single day, you start to rewire. You
Mhm.
start
Mhm.
to create a new habit. And I really think doubt is a habit. I literally tell my students, create a no doubt notebook, right? Any notebook you want, just pad of paper, write down every strong situation that's ever happened. And the minute you start to doubt, read back through that, because it'll remind your brain, it'll say, hey, no, 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 this is what's really going on. And I thought about that the day that I remember my husband went, that's it. I don't want to hear you doubting this stuff anymore, because 3 days
Yeah.
ago you said this. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
know, but this is, I'm
Yeah.
still new. So, but I tell people that create a notebook where you write down all the powerful experiences that you've had. And then that right there will bring you back to remembering what your true reality is.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I guess like my experience with that was we had a peaker. We had something playing peekaboo with us down at the end of a hall in a house that we lived in. And it wasn't a very nice thing.
No.
But I remember always feeling like something was watching down the hall. And then one night watching television, I looked down the hall and I saw it. Like I've never seen a full body apparition like you have, but I saw it dart away. And then I realized that a couple of days later, I was trying to explain it away.
Yeah.
And that I'd already started kind of forgetting that it happened. And I actually had to have like that moment in my head where I was like, no, dude, like you saw it, it was there, like you saw the features of it. And so, that was a real thing. But it's really hard because it's not necessarily repeatable, right? Like, so it's like, well, I can't make it happen again. Or
Yeah.
maybe we could have, but
No
yeah,
thanks.
so that's interesting.
So I had a question. So after you buy into it and you realize that this is for real and I'm going to do this, did you look back to before and did you have any experiences like we're talking about that you explained away before you believed?
I recalled two. And to be fair, I'm one of those kids that has very little memory from childhood, but I did recall two. One was Gen X, right? So I was home alone a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was just like, but I remember being around 11, 12, and hearing like a young boy downstairs yelling. And I remember thinking, do I call the police? Why don't you think to get out of the house? I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then seconds later, my mom came home and I remember her going, you're just hearing things.
Yeah.
So, that was one thing, turned out not to be. But the one that I remember that was pretty specific, and this is how I found out that some of my family
Ooh.
was into the spirit
Yeah.
realms.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that before. Why? Because my mom told them not to bring me into that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, it's not until I open up that I start to find out from my aunt and my cousin. They're like, well, yeah. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, yeah. Why didn't you bring me in the loop? And they're like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
make your mom mad? No way. We wouldn't have done that in a million years. So, when I was, again, maybe around 9 or 10, I was at my grandmother's house and I remember going upstairs and there was like a large hallway at the top of the stairs and they had a twin bed up there. And I remember seeing a woman on a twin bed putting on stockings.
Oh, wow.
And, as a kid, you're like, oh, she's putting on socks. But you grow up and you go, oh, no, those were stockings. But anyway, I remember going downstairs and my cousin and my grandma were down there. And I said to my grandma, there's a woman upstairs. And my grandma said, oh, don't worry, that's my mom.
Oh, wow.
And then then we all just, and I went, okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't think as a kid, I thought
Yeah.
her mom
Yeah.
was deceased. So come to find out, when I open up and I call my cousin and I say, hey, I'm going crazy. Seriously, I think I see grandma. I'm freaking out. She was like, oh, finally. Yeah, of course you're seeing her. She visited everybody when she died. And I'm like, so I'm now getting into the loop finally. And that's when my cousin said that they would take out a painting of her on purpose to have her visit.
Oh, wow.
And so the odds were probably good that that painting was pulled out that day that I saw her upstairs, because she would visit on the regular. And I'm like, where did I come from? Does anybody want to tell me before I'm like retired? Like, yeah. So those were the only two that I can remember, though.
Those are pretty powerful, specific ones, though.
That's kind of interesting too, because I don't know if I've ever thought about that possibility or not, about kind of being able to have someone show up, I guess, just by kind of talking about them, and just because I imagine it's maybe just as simple as that, right?
I have a great example for this one. This is one of my faves that I use when I teach. So I was a professional medium for a long time. I guess I still am, but at the time that I was doing readings, I had two young women, maybe in their mid-20s, come in to get a reading, and they were going to come in together. And Jenny, what do mediums say? You sure you want a reading together? Because if something comes through, right? You got to be able to know that you're going to hear stuff. Yes. We're best friends. Yes, here we go. So I start doing the reading, and I remember this was back, I think Obama was in the office. It was in office or something like this, but a man came through, and I remember he had this like tie-dyed t-shirt on. He was this tall, and he was talking about politics and how excited he was about something coming true, whatever. And the two young women looked at each other, and they were like, that's our boss. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, that's our boss. He died like a couple months ago.
Oh,
Why
wow.
the heck would he come through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not friends with him. We didn't hang out with him. We just knew him at work. And then one woman looks at the other one and goes, oh, we were talking about him on the car on the way over there. And I went, yes. So I literally, as a professional, would send an email to people before getting sessions. Talk to them on your way over. Talk to them, because the energy of when you don't have the physical connection and you don't have time and space, the energy of connection is intent and thought and speak, right? So talking to them, even in your own mind, is going to kind of resonate the two of you together. So yeah, I've saw that so many times. I would even joke sometimes, don't talk about somebody you don't want to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll come
I
in
was
the
I was having that happen when I first started learning mediumship. I would start thinking about someone, and then all of a sudden they were there. And I was like, okay, well, did they show up because I was thinking about them, or were they here and that's why I was thinking about them? And I think it's sometimes probably a combination of both. But at the time I was still trying to navigate that. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's very common.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my favorite one.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, older hippie boss.
Yeah.
That they worked for a short period of time.
Coworker
They don't want to
coming
talk
through.
to him.
Like, why did he come through?
That's kind of weird too, though, because work relationships are kind of weird relationships. I'm still like trying to get a hang on that in my life, because, on one hand, it's like, it's people you're kind of forced together with.
Yeah.
And you might not have all like the things you have in common with your close friends or family, where like you don't maybe listen to the same music or like the same movies or have the same life experiences, but you spend so much time with them that you kind of forge these relationships that maybe would have never happened, and those people still become important to you even if they were like annoying or something. I don't know. So I could definitely see like that
I can
happening.
think a few of those right now.
Yeah, I can see how there's still kind of maybe something there that carries on afterwards too, because interesting.
So for part of your bio, you talked about healing your own path. If you don't mind sharing some of that, what was that process and how did it happen, and et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, it was so it's one of those situations where today I'm so completely different than who I was back then. And it's one of those things that it's easier to see it once you're through it and
Oh
out of
yeah.
it.
Mm.
And on the other side of it, I can now look back and go, oh, that's why. And oh, that's why. So I was raised by that mom, right? That so many people have, that so many people don't want to have. That's the one that I had. And all due respect, right? But I ended up having to set some significant boundaries with her, especially when my kids were young, because it just wasn't stopping, right? And but I did the stereotypical leave mom, marry mom. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
get into
yeah.
the marriage that is the exact same thing.
Mm.
And opening up intuitively, it was a game changer because you start to feel people's intentions in addition to hearing their words. And you start to feel how your system is actually reacting to things. And you start to step out of fight or flight, not knowing I had been in fight or flight for like 30 some years.
Yeah.
Right. And so it did end, 20 years of marriage did end in a divorce. Pop a bottle of champagne for me though, because it was the best thing that ever happened. And the freedom that comes with it is huge. So in essence, what happened is, so my grandmother shows up, and then I worked with a very kind Tai Chi instructor, and I started communicating.
Not weird
with
at
him.
all. Not weird.
Not weird at all. Super nice. Super nice. Super nice. Yes, sensei. I'm sorry. Yeah, he was just the nicest man. And he was a good shining example of loving someone unconditionally when they're standing on your front step going help. But the big thing was that it was, I want to say 6, 7, 8 months into opening up, I was at a friend's house who lives out in the woods, and city girl, big city girl here. And I was walking back to my car, and I felt something in the woods. And I was pulled. Like I said, can I come out here and just sit one day? And he was like, sure. So I did. And I started to build a relationship with what I would consider my first spirit guide.
Oh, cool.
And I didn't even know what guides were. Like that's how uneducated I was in the world of the spirit realms. But it was this guy, and it was almost like a heat source. So people say, well, how do you see? I see with kind of like a heat source pattern. So you see like that clear radiant off of a hot paved road. Take that into the form of a person, and that's how I'm made aware that someone's in the room.
Are you seeing that with your eyes or with your mind's eye?
Eyes opened. I think mind's eye is how I would describe it more so. Like I said, I've only had a handful of physical, like with my eyes,
with your eyes,
moment. The rest of them is like, it's there, and you relax, and you kind of, I say that you relax your vision like away from the molecules. You go in between the molecules, right? Where spirit actually is, and you just sort of relax in that, relax away from the material world, let go of the agreed upon reality. And then I start to see the heat signature. So I started working with him, and I mean, I have a whole journal. I lovingly called him Big Dog because he just felt like this big, huge, thing. And I worked with him for almost 2 years, and he had me doing things that I'm like, that doesn't seem very spiritual. And he's like, yes, but it's something that you need to do. So I learned compassion, empathy, boundary setting, value. I learned so much from him, in addition to how to access intuition, past lives not being linear, how we come down here, how we leave. Like I learned so much from him that when I was done, I was a professional medium and was booked out as a result of everything he taught me. And then shortly after that, he said, I need you to take everything I taught you and bring it out in the world. And that's the SAGE method. That's the course. And I've been teaching that since 2015, 2016, something like that. And no, maybe 2007, 2008. Oh,
wow.
I know. So I've been teaching it ever since then, but everything that he taught me how to step back from an energetic situation, how to separate your energy long enough to see the reality of what's actually really happening. Because I was in fight or flight, so I was in reactive mode with everything I did. So when you're with a narcissist and you're in fight or flight, you just are surviving. And so you stay in it. Once that all started to dissipate, it was kind of like, here's all the things I can't do and have and be in anymore. And so I just started taking care of them. And then life got really good.
So your big dog spirit guide is hanging out in the woods at your friend's house. Was that like where he came from, or he's just decided to show up there to let you know that he's there that day?
Well, I look back at these stories. I'm so glad you asked that, Jane. I look back on these stories and I gotta tell you, I think spirit and spirit form set me up in some of these situations so that later I would sound kind of stupid telling these stories. Like, look,
there's that guy in the woods.
Was, right? Yeah. So because that's where I thought he was.
Yeah.
I thought he was like existed there.
Yeah.
And so he kept saying, come back Tuesday, come back next Thursday, come back. And I'd go out once or twice a week and just journal and learn different practices.
You really were going back to the woods to communicate with him. Oh, wow.
Yeah, for a long time, probably for like a year. And then I was driving out of that property and he showed up at the end of the driveway and I stopped the car and went, what are you doing here? Like, and he's like, I'm everywhere. That was the beginning of that lesson.
Yeah.
And I was like, so you've had me hauling my rear end to Kittery, Maine twice a week for a year and you can be anywhere? Yeah.
But in his defense, you going there, having that time by yourself in nature, especially since you're a city girl, there's no distractions. It's just you and him.
Yeah, exactly.
He knew what he was doing.
He knew what he was doing. And if I want to be completely honest about myself, also, he knew that maybe I had a little bit of commitment issues and I needed to be committed to the, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
they know.
I've never seen a gym membership through to the end. So
very few people do, I think. So I don't feel bad about that.
So I think it was, but yeah, I learned most everything that I still today know from him in that time period. So I'm really, really grateful.
CMC had a odd question, but only because we're always using our psychic skills around here. Yes. He wanted to know if your mom called you or referred to you as dear.
I mean, probably not the specific nickname, but I can think of a lot of times where it was like, that condescending dear. Okay, dear. That I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not in a nice way.
Yeah, not really is a nice way. And Kittery is a cool place to visit. It's beautiful. Yeah. Yes, it is beautiful.
Maine is a cool place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So that was one of your spirit guides. So you just worked with him for a couple of years and then that was it?
Well, I mean, he comes and goes. I just want to, I see in the comments, that's what I heard. So I'm assuming that's what I heard is that you heard that. Yeah. That
the condescending.
She called me dear. So, well, but I mean, that was the term that my grandmother called me all the time.
Oh, but in a nice way.
But yeah. Way nice. She made up for a lot of other stuff. But so if you heard the dear, that's because my mom is still here. So my mom has not passed, but my grandmother has. And if you're having a mediumship moment, I just wanted to let that viewer know that he probably heard my grandma. Yeah. So, yeah, she was pretty awesome. But anyway, I'm so sorry.
No, that's what we're here. Interaction with the chat. So Big Dog still shows up sometimes, but really he was there for that time to get you started.
Yeah. He was there.
What other kind of spirit guides hang out with you now that you're aware of?
So I've had only a handful over these 20 years. And so the three most, I mean, grandma, we can consider her as one, but
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. But she's kind of my like security blanket one. She makes me feel safe. Like the first time I had to get on stage and do stuff like that, you know, she's by my side. Because I'm shaking in my boots. And
Yeah.
but until I'm stronger and then it's better. He came and went, and he's still around, but he'll come when there's a time that I have to learn a new concept or new understanding. So he doesn't come around as often. The other two are Nancy and Peter. And Nancy was with me after Big Dog. Nancy was with me for a couple of years. And I want to call her the etiquette queen. She showed up in this, like, I remember it was like this satiny 70s librarian top, and her hair was back and she had a clipboard, and she was very strict, you know. And I come from a very colorful family as well, verbally colorful family. And so she helped me with little habits that I didn't realize I had, really to kind of hold myself in the best compassionate space for a client. For example, try not to say dead, say deceased, you know, because you're talking about somebody's family member, right? So
Yeah.
like, and I had a habit of saying, you know, it's funny, but, and then she would be like, nothing you say in the reading is funny, so please don't say that, you know. So she was just trying to help me, you know, get into the to the groove of how to be very professional. Plus,
Yeah.
she was very diligent on me about, you know, my just self-care and habits and stuff. So she was fun. She was Nancy. And then Peter is with me currently, and he's been with me for a number of years. He's the one that helps with business decisions, sacred space meditation that I do with my groups every full moon, new moon. He's kind of my go-to. So he's really my main guide. Yeah, a couple other little, I shouldn't say little, they're listening. I'm just kidding. Don't tell him I said that. But
yeah,
like,
too late.
Yeah, too late. I have one guy named Manny who shows up just when I'm not having fun, when I'm not giving myself like time to have fun and laugh. And so and now it's to the point where if I just see him, I'm like, I know, Manny, I know why you're here. You're right. I'm too serious. I got to have some fun again. So Manny, I've got the Scotsman, I like to call him. So he's a bit of a ball buster. He's pretty cool. But it's mostly Peter. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Pretty interesting spirit guide stuff. Okay, so tell us about the SAGE method. What is it?
The SAGE method is practically everything that Big Dog taught me in those first 2 years. It is a little bit of a different approach because the cool part about my opening spiritually is that because I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't know what to look for in teaching. So I just kept doing whatever he told me to do.
Yeah.
And it's a 7-week course because it's a lot, because you got to take 2 years and condense it down to something. And the best I could do was 7 weeks. So I started teaching that. I got a bunch of my clients together back in 2007, 2008. And I said, will you be guinea pigs for me and let me try this? And they went through the 7 weeks. I did 2 rounds. They went through the 7 weeks, and it was just so cool because at the end of it, there's these 2 kind of really unique experiments. And it shows you how much of a psychic you are, how much of a medium you are. And it's so fun to see people go, no way, I actually did that. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So word spread quickly, and I taught it in person up until 2019. And then Peter said, in 2019, I need you to put this on video and put it online.
Yep.
And I said,
because they knew it was coming.
He did. Yeah, he knew it was coming. And I remember saying no, because I know I don't come across shy, but I'm like a huge introvert and very shy. And if I had my choice, I'd
Me
be
too. Me too,
I know. And if I had my choice, I would be behind the scenes and hiding in a cave. But I don't have the choice. And then I'm following what they're telling me to do, which is bring it out in the world. Got it. So 2019, I finally went on camera. And even today, when you watch it, you can see I'm just still a little shy. But I had taught it so many times that I was able to put it on film, upload it to an online course. COVID hit, it exploded. and the course was like $1,500 when I taught it in person. And Peter was like, put it online, mark it down 90%. And then just, it's been a whirlwind ever since. And so I've got students all over the globe at this point, which is really fun. Because it's just been so cool. But the course is different because it's a bit of a formula, and it's sort of body, mind, and spirit. And the mind part comes first. The first couple of weeks is understanding your personal programming and those patterns and the pattern recognition, and getting yourself distanced enough in an observational point of view to see things with more clarity, cleaning up, decluttering your mind, decluttering your environment, things like this, and talking greatly about how intuition, that is what blocks it. So intuition isn't something that people get, or only special people have.
Yep.
Everyone has it full strength, full on, but most people, it is so closed and cluttered by the personal programming that we got usually as kids. And once you start to remove that, shake that personal programming free, like unwedge it, your intuition starts coming out more and more and more. And then the middle portion of it is explaining how a lot of things work. Linear time, past lives, where spirit is, how, the spaces in between the molecules, like all that stuff. And then at the very end of the experiments to show people exactly what they're capable of. It's fun. Can you see I lit up? I love teaching the course. So yeah.
So for the online part, since they're watching videos and stuff, do you have time where you meet with those students that are doing the online course to chat or do exercises together or anything?
Yeah, we have so I've got the Sage Circle community, which is an online membership community. And that's where I do my meditations. That's twice a month. I've been doing sacred space meditations for 15 years or something. And so we do the meditations in there. I do Q&A. We do card practice. We do mediumship training. I do additional training courses in there, reading babies in utero, like all of the different little niche specialties. And there's also a forum in there and a community. So that's where people can ask questions as they go along, get some coaching, things like that. So I put them into that membership for free for 2 months. So they have that coverage.
Yeah.
And then
get them started.
Yeah, to get them started, just so they have the support in the background and they're not alone with it. So yeah.
Awesome. It sounds like a great program. We do have a question from Cole.
Yeah.
You want to read it, Frosty?
Sure. Do you do the exact same procedure to get into contact for any and all entities, or does Big Dog need a different ritual mindset versus other spirits?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So not the exact same for every. So for example, if I'm reading for somebody else, if I'm reading for a stranger, like if I was going to read for a client that comes in, it's kind of more being in a state of curiosity of who's in the room, right? Whereas if I'm trying to connect with a guide or a loved one of mine, it feels more like I'm going inward. And then lastly too, other entities and other spirits just in day to day, I find that the difference is, the similarity is every time I approach it like I'm brand new and that I have no idea how they're going to communicate. And that's how I can communicate with many, because I learned over the years that every spirit vibrates at different vibrational levels. Some are very connected into, the earth-based structures energetically, like electricity. Some are connected into sound patterns and waves. And I find that the minute I expect it to be the same way, I lose that strength in my mediumship. So that's one thing I tell people is, if you want to strengthen your intuition and your mediumship, approach both psychic and mediumship every time as this should be interesting. I'm interested in how it will come through. Because a lot of times what we
Yeah.
can do is one spirit will show up and is very visual, and another one shows up and is very strong. I can hear them very strongly, but if I approach everyone visually, I'm not going to hear the one that communicates through sound.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so every time I'm like, however you want to come through,
Yeah.
I'm super interested in how you come through, and then I feel like I get the strength that way.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's a really good point, because you're expecting different things to come through. They're not all necessarily going to come through the same way, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yes, the expectations block it. Perfect. This is like the perfect way of saying it. If you expect it to happen that way, then you've already blocked 90% of it.
Yep.
Yeah,
And in
the
my
clair is an action.
Yeah,
And-
which is why, remember how earlier you said we can't reenact it?
Yep.
That's why you
Yeah.
can't not reenact it, but recreate it.
Mhm.
That's why, because we're expecting it to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in my experience, if things are coming through that you're not expecting, don't fight it either.
Yeah.
Just let it be, and you'll be surprised.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a good question or not, but this brings this up in my mind, because I hadn't listened to one of the interviews that you did, Jenny. I was listening to earlier
Oh yeah.
on a podcast, and it was talking about smell.
Mhm.
That clair. And so, like, I wonder, it made me, talking about this now just made me think about that, because I was wondering, like, are there times that things are trying to communicate through a clair that you haven't completely developed yet?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You know?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think so, Bo? Or
I do. And a lot of times what blocks us is our belief structure. So, for example, in the first couple of years, I was raised to be perfect, to be the top, to do the best kind of thing. And I love saying that, because I know there's so many people that go, yep, me too. Like, it's so common in our generation. But that I was afraid to try to get names of deceased people, because I was so scared I was going to be wrong.
Yep.
And so I just went with the security blanket of saying, oh, I don't get names. Names are not my thing.
Mhm.
And
I still have that
sounds
problem.
familiar.
I'm always
Sounds
like,
familiar?
well,
Familiar?
names aren't my strong suit, so let's see
Names
what
aren't
I
my
get.
strong suit,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and it was Big Dog that came back through again and said, you got to stop with
Yep.
this. This is not the truth. The truth is you're scared. That's not the truth. So for the next week, you have to constantly be saying, I get names all the time. They're super easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the next client comes in, and her grandmother's name is Mary, and then her two friends are Mary and Susan, and all three of those names come through, and I'm like, that's weird. So if we expect not to be able to hear, or and another one is that people, once one clair opens, they expect that that's the one, that's how it will always happen for them. And I tell people, no, just stay open to all of them, because you're going to have more and more experiences. Intuition comes through and utilizes all 5 of our senses. And when we say, I don't know how I know, I just know, I guarantee one of your senses is reacting, but you're not aware of it. So I tell people, when you have an intuitive moment and you just know, you don't know how you know, you just know, and then something happens and proves itself to you, I want you to sit down, go back to that intuitive moment, try to recreate it, and try to think back. Did I see something? Did I smell something? Did I hear something? And some little faint something will come through, and you'll be like, you know what? I think I did see a red truck. The minute you do that, you've opened up huge floodgates, because the next time it happens, your visual is going to be like, good, you recognized me last time, see it again. And it'll just start to get stronger and stronger, because it's kind of like we're going no to our 5 senses, right? And we know something, but we don't think we're going to actually see it, feel it, hear it, smell it, right? But once we have that review where we go back and we go, wait a minute, I think I did hear someone say something. The minute you do that, the next time it comes through, it's going to come through with more ease, and you're going to start to hear in the moment. It's really quite magical. It just, in my opinion, it's so cool to see people process that.
Yeah, I think I did that for a couple weeks with names. I was like, I can get names. And then I was like, nah. I'm still working on names.
You've had, yeah, I mean, you've had luck. I mean, I feel like there for a while you were doing better. I think like
No,
you are
I
doing
mean,
better
when,
with
it's
names.
like Bo
Yeah.
said, when I'm like, yeah, I can do this, it happens.
Mhm.
And then when I doubt myself, that's when it doesn't happen. Yeah.
Manifesting, just
Yeah.
like we were talking about earlier. I think it was
Mhm.
Cole who said that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was CMC maybe, or
Oh, yeah,
maybe
CMC,
Cole.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another way to say it is, it's not that we should be working toward making our intuition stronger. It's that we should be recognizing more often when we're off and what's going on when we're
Yep.
off.
Mhm.
How are we getting in our own way? Once you see those little things that you do, then you can catch
Yeah.
them faster. And then you just open up more windows of, okay, I know what it's like for me to be in my groove, and I know
Mhm.
what pulls me out. And
Yep.
recognizing what pulls you out is what allows you to stay in longer.
Well, I don't think it's a miracle because, as we said, we've been going for over 3 years. We're about to get on our 100th episode, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned Star Wars before on the show. I'm a Star Wars nerd, and I don't know if I've ever really talked about it. I got on Jenny's nerves the other day, I think, because we were talking about this, and I started using Yoda quotes. But it's so, to me, it really is, and a lot of this stuff was taken from Eastern philosophy anyway, like when
Yeah.
this stuff
Yeah.
was written.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
like so much of the things that come out of that really are applicable to what
Mhm.
mediums and intuitives do. Like
Yeah.
the whole, the whole idea of just like trusting, fear. You can't fear the things, like you just have to let the things happen.
Don't
There
try
is
it.
no
Don't try, just
try, there's
do.
only
Just
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like very true. It's like the whole thing with
Oh,
the names. There is
Yoda.
no try. Don't try to get the name.
Do
You're
it.
going to do the name. And then that concept seems to really work, right?
It
Like it
does.
really does kind of work that way. I think I was
Think
teasing you about that the other night. We were
Yeah,
talking
you
about
were.
how these things actually are a little more true than you would think coming from a
Yeah.
Hollywood movie.
And then I think I threatened you with something. I don't know.
Probably.
I know, Yoda.
I think Star Wars and the Matrix need to be like assigned in the classroom. Like that's here.
Have you
Mhm.
ever heard, I'm gonna get us way off topic, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the theory of the Matrix and the Terminator movies?
No, I don't think
There
so.
there is a woman who was on Coast to Coast at one point in time. She was a guest on there with Art Bell. But she claims that she was the original writer of both stories, that the Matrix and that the Terminator movies were all things that she had written back in like the 70s or whatever, and that basically her story was stolen and turned into Hollywood scripts. But that essentially the Matrix was a sequel to her original stories, which were like the Terminator thing. So you have I'm gonna blank here and forget the names, but you had
John Connor.
John Connor,
Mhm.
right? Who is the person who grows up to fight the machines, like the AI and everything, whose initials are JC, right?
Okay.
Jesus Christ. Like that's
Yeah.
what she talked about. And
Okay.
then you have the Matrix, which is essentially John Connor or Neo,
Yeah.
the one who comes out of the Matrix to end up finally killing all of the machines. And so if you follow like the Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and then you go into the Matrix series, it's actually one big, huge story that has like this religious kind of overtone to John Connor being kind of the savior of the story or whatever. And ever since I heard that interview, and I actually looked it up not that long ago, I've been fascinated with the concept of like doing like a marathon where we just watch those specific in order and think of it as one narrative.
That's
But
cool. That's cool.
yeah.
I can see how those would link.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
because
do.
it's all dealing with
Mhm.
AI in
Oh
the
yeah.
machines, and then both of them really have like this main character who kind of has this religious overtone, connected. I don't know. So Neo is John Connor. That would be the thing there in that
That I
conspiracy
can see
theory.
how that would link. You know what else I love in the Matrix is that I was gonna call her the mystic. No, the Oracle.
Yes,
Mhm.
the Oracle. Yeah,
He
yeah.
has to accept the cookie first.
Mhm.
Like we accept
Oh, yeah,
cookies on
yeah.
websites.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Yeah, you have to
There's
accept
just
the cookie.
so many little things like that. I The best description of someone who has gone very far down a spiritual path and experienced a disconnect from space and time, the space between the molecules is done, and is so much work that they start to see this agreed upon reality for kind of what it is, right? It's like a play, and we're all actors, sort of thing, and they start to understand it in that term. It's the guy eating the steak in the restaurant in the Matrix, and that line gets me every time, where he's like, I know this steak is not real,
Oh yeah.
but
Uh-huh.
I still want to enjoy it. And that's what it's like, I think, to go really far down the spiritual rabbit hole
Yeah.
and reset your experience to where you're experiencing it so differently that you know what it is, but you're also really excited to be in it. You know it's a play. You know that everyone is an actor on stage,
Yeah.
but the actors
Hmm.
are still your friends, and you're all still doing this together, but you know
Mhm.
it's not real, but you love the experience of it.
The whole idea of being incarnated.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
why do we keep coming back? Jenny asked this question, I think, quite often. We
Mhm.
have this conversation.
Yeah.
Why do we keep coming back? I didn't want to come back this time. I wasn't supposed to come back. I'm done with this. But, even though the universe and everything and the energy and there's all these wonderful things that we can experience outside of these bodies, there are things that we can only experience inside of them.
Yep.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'll throw this one at you. On the other side, we don't have linear time. So linear time
Mhm.
is an earth-based structure, right?
Yep.
That means that your higher self on the other side, let's say it's a ball of light, you take a little speck of that light out and you throw it into a body, and it has a life, drops the body, or as Nancy would say, becomes deceased. And then
Mhm.
and then the spirit of that body comes back up and reconnects into the higher self, right? If the higher self is not on linear time, then that entire lifetime happened in a moment.
Yeah.
And if the higher self is not on linear time, all lifetimes happen
Mhm.
in a moment. So
Mhm.
lifetimes are not linear. They don't happen one after another.
Yeah.
We don't carry something through to the next one. This also means that if the higher self knows all and already knows everything that happens in the lifetime as it sends it down and it comes back in an instant anyway, means we're not here to learn anything, because then that would be saying that the higher self doesn't know something. But we are here to do exactly what you said, experience something. The higher self can be an avid, I don't know what's the right word for someone that loves plants, right? Gardener type. Well,
Mhm.
Herbologist or
there we
something.
go.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take
Or
the word
something.
for all love of plants, and let's say the higher self is that. It's not until the higher self takes a speck of that light out, puts it into a body, and that person is a gardener, that the higher self is going to know the experience and the emotional connection in linear time to what planting the seed, watching it grow, harvesting it, right?
Mhm.
So it's experiences that are had on linear time that are what the higher self is looking for. And once you get that, then you realize this entire life's already happened. And then once you get another layer of that, knowing that every major decision you make kind of splits off into two different realities, and where your consciousness stays is just where you are, then you realize how many lives you've had just in the one life, and all of those experiences that go back up. It's all about experiences.
And all of that hurts my brain.
I'm sorry. This is like everything that Big Dog and I went through for those 2 years.
Because I know all that, and I get it, but it's still like,
Yeah.
it's when you're having to be in this linear timeline that doesn't seem like it's happening in a moment. It's very hard to wrap your mind around all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
And-
absolutely agree. I did a medium reading one time, and I can't remember who it was for. Actually, I remember who it was for now. It was for Terra Mama. But I don't know why we went there, why she needed to see this. I don't remember the message that came through. But I was taken to what I can only describe as the river of time. And I'm standing in space, like what seems like outer space, and there's this glowing essence flowing through in front of me that looks like a river, and I'm being shown and explained to that basically what you said. It's like all the experiences that we have in all of our lives for everybody in the whole entire existence of everything gets put into this flow.
Yeah.
It's like, this is why we're doing this. Like we're going to have experiences so that we can report it back and have it all be this one thing. And it was unbelievable, like the sensation of standing there and witnessing that. So yeah, I get it. It's just, when you're here and there's some BS happening, you're like, ah, why do we gotta experience this higher self, huh?
Yeah, my favorite now is what am I experiencing from this? Great. Yeah. So
Thanks.
yeah. And I understand and deeply respect that a lot of the experiences that people have here are downright sometimes horrific and
Absolutely, yeah.
just brutal. And they say, well, why would I want to experience that? Each and every one of us is a part of a soul group, and that entire soul group has an agreement in the process, and nothing will move if it's all positive. Nothing will bounce off of each other. There will be no contrast. There'll be nothing like that'll happen.
Or if nothing bad happens, it doesn't give anybody the opportunity to do something really great.
Yeah. Exactly.
The last thing I'll say from our little delve here into pop culture is my favorite part of that movie, which is there is no spoon.
There is no spoon.
And on that, let me reset here. If you are joining us, this is the Witching Hours, and we are talking to Isabeu Maxwell tonight. We're discussing the sage method and Star Wars and the Matrix and all kinds of stuff.
And that there's no time.
Yeah, no time.
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon. Welcome in. If you have a question, whether you're listening to us on joining us on YouTube or on Facebook or on Twitch, feel free to leave a comment in chat. And if you have a question, if you put it in chat, we will pass along those questions as the episode continues to move along. And we will make sure that your question is asked. So if you have something you want to know about, if you have a question for Bo, put it in chat. And either me or the medium Jenny Lee will get to that as soon as we possibly can. All right.
I got can we do like a little speed round here?
Yeah.
We still got plenty of time.
Well, I mean, the speed round is most likely going to turn into a bunch of stories about things.
Okay.
But this, if it, I have a list. Okay. Angels.
Angels is a term for a level of an energetic being that supports. Multiple cultures tap into that same energetic level of being just call it a different name.
Yep. Okay, so here's a question, because of course we're only experiencing them from our perspective. Do you think that they're out there helping people and energies and spirits and all the other places too? Or do you think that they're like just here helping Earth people?
Oh, Earthbound.
They're
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, they're everywhere. The way that I describe it is, we in human form, we're like kids on a playground that is surrounded by a large chain link fence. And guides and angels and higher ups are source, whatever term you use, they're outside of the fence. And they can only interject so much. They can't come into the playground to change something. So this is why some people are, connected and can hear and can deliver messages and such. If you take that and then multiply that by infinity, that's the same on every planet in every lifetime in every cycle. Not to get Star Trekky here, but it's kind of like a holodeck. So I'm just saying, right?
Yeah.
We're just nerding up this episode. That's
That's one of my favorite things from Star Trek. I remember, move over, Jean-Luc. That's what I want to go to. But
the holodeck would be pretty sweet. Yeah.
I have been shown our reality as a hologram a couple of different times. Yeah.
Matrix.
Yeah.
Okay. I see it as code. It's but that's probably because I'm mathematical.
Because you're math. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And
it's code.
Your answer brought up something interesting there too, because in my mind, when we talk about these things, is especially when we talk about spirit guides, but they're like from another planet, they're like another, or we talk about what spirits are like earthbound, or if there's things traveling all over the universe. And for me, sometimes it's hard for my mind to go, well, like there's got to be things that are here because those other places are so far away. But then you also have to, but then my brain starts spinning a little bit, the wheels get turning with some squeaky noises, but you start thinking about the prospect of time and space, and in another dimension, that vast distance that we know as human beings to a light being could essentially just be no point of distance at all.
No point at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be as easy for them to get from one place to another as it is for me to walk to the kitchen. Yeah.
Or easier.
Or even easier. Yeah.
There's probably no stairs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There's no stairs. Yeah.
If we start to see Earth as being built within source instead of away from it, then everything starts to make sense, because all of the space in between the solid, right? So you got two molecules, there's always more space in between molecules than there are the actual molecule. And if we start to see the solid, and that's just the best analogy I can come up with. But if we start to see the spaces in between the solid as source, and then the solid comes together to create form, this is why, form, energy never dies, et cetera, et cetera. But for some being on one planet to connect with us on this one, it's a matter of navigating source, not actual physical space. So that's when everything becomes instantaneous.
Yeah.
Paul actually had a good point to kind of bring up what we were just talking about too, about like remote viewing, what we were talking about earlier, like remote viewing, you're seeing something in real time that's really far away. So like this idea of like consciousness exceeding all of these barriers that we set out.
Instantaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next, ETs.
ETs. I still hold a healthy fear.
Have you come across any? Have you had any come through in readings or anything?
Yes, I will say that they're at a different vibration than human.
Yep.
And every intuitive kind of hovers at a certain vibration, right? This is how like animals are different vibration than people. So I hover in the human vibration, but I've had some experiences. I had one experience that I've only had one experience that was intense enough that I was like, But I haven't let go of that. It's a human part of me. I
Yeah.
still haven't let go of that. So I've had little bits, right?
Mhm.
Mostly in the form of like spirit guides that come through that I
Mm.
know are not human for
Yeah.
someone, but
Mhm.
I good friends with experiencer. I think that's how it's said.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
a survivor experiencer. And legit, like this is just he's just a great soul. And we were at a restaurant, we were hanging out, there's nobody in the restaurant, and he said, I can remember up to this point, and then I can't remember anything beyond this point.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
said, well, talk me up to that point. And he did. And I said, okay, well, what if because we were just friends, and I'm like, well, what if you just like meditate into a vibration where maybe you like settle into something that might take you to the next point. The second I said it, I knew someone was standing behind me. And I remember like looking down and I saw long fingers, transparent,
Mhm.
behind me. And it felt like something showed up to say, you're done. And I went, okay, we're done. We're done. I'm all good. This is okay. We're done.
Wow.
It cut, and that sounds really threatening. It felt
Mhm.
more like this is where we put the period at the end of the sentence and then
Yeah.
we don't move forward. It felt more like that, but
Yeah.
I overreact when it comes to that stuff too, to be
But
fair.
Bo, it's just source.
I know, and I know this, and that's the thing. And I also know that I'm sure many of my lifetimes has probably been on that dude's planet.
Yeah.
So like
Mhm.
like
You had them
I know it.
fingers.
Yeah, I've got long fingers. I'm totally alien. But like you, I know it, but my head, the
Yeah.
human part still gets in the way.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
It's so very different.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we were just talking about this the other night. Like, in order to, because you accept these things, but our human brain is still trying to make sense of all this. So even though it's like,
Mhm.
you have to let go, and you know that like all things are kind of possible, that we're dealing with different rules and quantum physics and all these different things. It's like your brain still like fights. It's going to be a constant struggle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To a certain degree. I know it will be
So
for me.
we talked about how past lives aren't really past because it's all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you have any recollections of other lives that you've had or that you're currently having somewhere?
Currently having somewhere. I've had a handful of experiences with it. I can't say I have any like I was a queen. I'd
Mhm.
love to, but they were always all my lives, I think, are very just like low key,
Mhm.
and then something happens. But I have seen the pattern. I did see one where I knew that it wasn't human, and we were underwater, and that's how we breathed.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so clearly not human.
Yeah.
And then I remember another being that felt like in that lifetime, like was like a brother or sister, something of that sort.
Mhm.
Because when you're in that, your human brain's going, huh? But
Mhm.
and I
Mhm.
felt them lift me up over the water, so I couldn't breathe. And then
Oh.
when I went back down and I was working with a hypnotherapist, they kind of got to the point that was mom, So her and I have
Mhm.
had many lifetimes together.
Oh, that
And
is your current mother.
Mm.
yeah, so that was the
Wow.
only time I've experienced that because I hear people talk about that a lot, having other life
Mhm.
experiences and how it's very similar to what's going on and the patterns are similar, which makes sense because they're all happening at the same time. They're all going
Yeah.
to have the same kind of flow. So that was the only one that I really experienced that. I do know that there's like a lion tamer, and I've had a couple things like that. But yeah, just very few, very few.
Well, that doesn't sound boring. Lion tamer
Yeah.
Well,
and an underwater alien creature. Those are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
yes, I had a past life as a sea
As a
otter.
sea otter.
Cool trick. Good one. Yeah, that's
So
total sea otter.
staying on the past lives thing, because
Okay.
like I've started having to like basically all the words we have for things are garbage.
Yes.
especially when it comes to spiritual stuff, because it's not what we think it is. So
Mhm.
then once you really get into it, all the words are just trash. Like they don't fit.
Yeah.
But talking about the past life thing, because you kind of mentioned it earlier about how, like, we're not really coming here to learn something, we're coming here for experiences. But then,
Mhm.
like, we're having all of these experiences in all of these different lives, and there's these patterns that are happening probably in so many of them.
Mhm.
When we think about it as a past life, we think about it as like these things that cause issues that we need to fix now.
Yeah.
But if we think about it as it's all happening at the same time, then do you think it's still worth trying to break some of those patterns currently, and that it would fix all the other pattern, like the pattern throughout, like the whole thing?
Mhm. I do. I think that is so hard talking about this stuff because you're
Yeah,
so
yeah.
right. There's no spiritual
There's
dictionary.
words don't work.
Words don't work in
Mhm.
the spiritual world. They just don't. Um, but if you think about all of our lives happening at the same time,
Mhm.
kind of a continual pattern, it means at some point you will be facing an almost identical or extremely similar issue as you're facing in another life, right? So let's say we're just going to limit ourselves to numbers. Let's say there's
Yeah.
100
Mhm.
lives.
Mhm.
Not true, but let's say there's 100 lives. That means that 100 of you are facing that same obstacle. And in some sense, you're all from the same higher source. So in some
Yep.
sense, there are moments where I can carry more of that weight, but the me in another one can't.
Yeah.
And then there's another point in my life where I can't carry that much weight, but another one of my lives can. So, and the way that this is experienced is when you have a problem or a situation or something that you're processing through, and it doesn't feel that difficult to you, but it feels odd because it should feel difficult, right?
Mhm.
Those
Mhm.
are the ones that most of the difficult emotions are being carried by your other lives. So a little bit of a group effort on the whole group, the whole team is all you. So like in high school where you're put on a team to do a homework task, it's like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
One of y'all is going to slack off, and then
Somebody's gonna be the jackass. Yeah.
someone's going to be the jackass, and then somebody else is going to hold it up. And
Yeah.
you're just going to take turns, and it's kind of this fluid um multi-life flow, really.
Well, that's interesting. So, one thing I was thinking about as you were explaining that was to use your example of using to put a limit on the 100 lives. If you're living 100 lives and I'm living 100 lives and Jenny's living her 100 lives, aren't all 100, and let me know if I'm getting this wrong here. Wouldn't all of us really be living those lives together if we're all coming from the same source? So, I guess my question would be here is I think like all my past life experiences that I've seen, it's like that's Frosty's life. And this was Frosty's past life and another past life that I had. But wouldn't that also be Jenny's past life and Bo's past life? If we're all coming from
For
source,
all source. Yeah.
we're essentially one entity sharing in all of these experiences.
Mhm.
Yes. The way that I teach it,
Now we hurt Frosty's brain.
Yeah, I'm
yeah. But
good night, everybody. We'll
have a good
we'll see you guys next Thursday.
have a good night.
The hamster fell out of the wheel on that one.
Yeah.
I think I can help with this one a little bit by giving some form to the other side.
Mhm.
So if we, because there's no form, which is what makes
Mhm.
it makes our words not be able to really
So
define anything.
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we were to look at the other side in the sense of form, right? One higher self is a ball of light. Another higher self is a ball of light. So Jenny's a ball of light, Frosty's a ball of light. Right?
Mhm.
And every single higher self ball of light is connected energetically to each other. And it's like a spider web, the multi-dimensional spider web, right? And whoever's closest to you on the spider web is your soul group. The closest ones are the soul mates. Then outside of that are your friends and your acquaintances. Then comes those coworkers that we talked about, right? Then
Yeah.
comes the people that we run into in public. And then after that, we're probably not going to run into these people in a lifetime. This is why when something happens to someone close to you, the spider web shakes and you can feel it, right?
Mhm.
So that's how we're all linked, and we don't lose that link when we go and have a life. So if the two of you are super close on this multidimensional spider web, when you guys throw yourself into lives, that link is still there, and it will be in every single life.
Makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense to visualize it like that.
It's really interesting.
It's also
There's so many implications to that. There's so many implications to that. Like, it just brings so many more questions, you know.
Oh yeah. And then another question, so do you see why I talked to Big Dog for 2 years?
Yeah.
It was like we had to just keep going. But this is also why we can't manifest anything we want at any moment, because we're all down here and linked together. So for one person to manifest anything, it would mess up the life experience of all the other people.
I keep thinking about that all the time, because manifesting and like this idea that we can create our own reality. It never really made a whole lot of sense to me, because we are all connected to each other, and what one person does affects the next 10 people. So yeah,
if it's all connected, there's a ripple that's going to go throughout the whole entity.
It never really made sense to me. So I'm glad that you explained it that way.
That's really interesting.
And I get shown that web all the time for people's readings, especially for people who don't see their own worth. That comes up a lot. It's like, don't you see that like you're this piece that is connected to all these other pieces, and without you, the whole thing falls apart? Like, that comes through so many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cole Drake said consensual reality. Is that a term that's been used, or is that something that you've coined there, Cole? I've never heard that term before, but that's good.
Good.
And it's really interesting because earlier tonight, and you just used that thing again, we talked about, I brought up the coworkers. Like, that we have this relationship, and then you just use it. So it's almost like a synchronicity there.
It's like the ring around outside.
It is.
Yeah. But it makes it, but then I was curious, because it's like, we met for the first time tonight, Bo, but we're having this great conversation. And so it made me wonder, like, are the waves are a little closer to each other, possibly just by the fact that we're having this conversation and that we're having this interaction in this, whereas maybe like
I've had plenty of coworkers that ended up being way closer on that web than I would have thought they were.
For sure. Well, that's what I was saying. Like, sometimes
they're still my friends. Yeah.
They end up being pretty intimate, friendships, they can be, even though there's like no reason for you to be together other than kind of being forced together.
Yeah.
Well, the military for me was a good example of that.
Good point.
Yeah.
That is a really good point. Everyone is making their reality, but we as humans come to some consensual ground rules to exist in a stable environment. That's a great way to explain it. When we come down here, here's your limitations. Are you up for it? And, yeah.
As I said before, like the deeper you kind of go down this, I think the more
questions you've got.
Very, very interesting.
So one of the things on my list was higher self, but we talked about that a lot. So kind of backtracking a little bit, you're talking about, we're existing on this one vibration, and then there's these other entities that are existing on higher vibrations, like angels, ETs, etc. Have you come across other higher entities that like maybe don't necessarily have form, but that they're like not on the same plane as us?
Yes. And actually I've come across a couple of different types. And so one thing I learned early on is that they don't function in hierarchy. Hierarchy is a concept that we have, right?
Absolutely.
But with that said, They have, and spirit guides too, like Big Dog ended up he's in my soul group. And I remember when I said to him, like, what's your name? His answer was, which one do you want? You know, because this is how many lives I've had. And so him and I have had lives together, but he didn't come into formation in this one. So there's all those possibilities, but you've got guides that will work with you one-on-one, right? And that's what they're focused on for you to help guide you in that lifetime. You have guides that will guide a family. You have guides that will guide a community. You have guides that will guide a nation. And so depending on the type of energetics needed to keep this earth moving in the direction it needs to move for this extension of time, right? Thinking of this too, all of these guides already know everything from the beginning of it to the end of it, right? And they're just holding the energy to make sure it plays out the way it needs to play out. So I've connected with some of those. It's not a two-way conversation. It's usually just kind of knowing what's coming from that direction. But I don't find that they stop, watching over the entire, country and let me chat with you. So it's not really, that's not the kind of vibe I get. It's not a one-on-one conversation. The other beings that I find beautiful and I was very uncomfortable at first connecting with them are beings that are here, that are not in human form, that are not connected to any sort of religion or anything like this, but they have some sort of a skill set or ability or whatnot. And they come here and it's almost like they're working, like boots on the ground to like help. Right. And one that I ran, I'll give you an example. I've run into these types of beings probably like 10, 15 times. And every time I do, it warms my heart because I feel like we're watched over in ways that we don't even realize.
Yeah.
And I remember the first one, I was driving through New Mexico. I was passenger in a car through New Mexico, and I saw this being transparent, right? But I saw this being that was like, it sounds so odd when you say it, but it looked like a half bear, half wolf kind of dog, right? But it was big. And my first human reaction was, no, oh my gosh, scary, right? Like movie. And then I went, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. So I started talking to my guide, what is this? And he said, they balance the radiation.
Oh.
I know. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. Why in the world would I see him here? And then like we go past the New Mexico radiation signs and stuff. And I'm like, oh, got it. So fast forward, these are the moments. These are like the moments you talked about earlier, Frosty, where you have this moment and you're like, wow. And then a couple days later, it kind of fades. But a couple of years after that, I was doing because I do a lot of spiritual clearings. It's just something that I love to do. It's a passion. And I was at a person's house doing a clearing and we were out in their yard. This is years later. I see one of those beings again.
Oh, wow.
And then it like comes toward me and like kind of its head went down just a little bit. And I just stood there and I know that no one can see this, but
yeah.
So I'm just standing there trying to act cool. And I'm like, this is intimidating. And then it just went back over there and it all clicked. And I turned to the man of the house who had hired me for the clearing. And I said, do you have radiation problems here? And he said, yeah, in this block radius, there's been like almost every house has people who have cancer. Wow. And I'm like, huh. And that's one of those moments that you walk away going, you can't make this up. Like,
no. Yeah. I say that on the regular. Yeah. Except I usually have an expletive in there with it.
I'm trying to be very professional. But yeah, I've seen that. I've seen, and it's always an energy type balance thing,
That's really cool though.
Yeah. So that was one that really kind of hit my heart, but
wow.
Yeah. Like we're watched over by things that we don't even realize.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that makes a good segue into the next thing on the list, which was ghosts. Is that, well, first, I guess that's a two-parter. Okay. So what's your idea and experience with that particular term? And then also, is that part of what you're doing when you're doing energy clearings?
Yes. So working with spirits is exactly what I'm do with the energy clearance, helping crossover. So I like to joke that ghosts are people too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little hot-headed around that one, so I'm just giving you a heads up on it.
Okay.
But I've done so many clearings at this point. So when I was doing a lot of clearings, especially when I lived back in New England, I got into that becoming the go-to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I trained and I did them. And by the time you've done enough of them, you realize every single one of them is a person who's struggling.
Yep.
And so on my journeys cross country, I would run into places that, and no offense to anybody that's running one of these, but I'm going to say it as it is because this is how I feel. But I would run into places that would sell tickets in exchange for, getting a haunted experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I ran into one in particular that really, really broke my heart because they had a medium on staff who was paid to keep the ghosts in there.
Oh,
and I'm like,
geez.
that's gross. So
Yeah.
my opinion is those are like what I would consider a human zoo. Not cool. Let them go home. But with all that said, so I do tend to call them spirits more than ghosts, but I'm not offended by the term ghost at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it dehumanizes
Yeah.
what you're dealing with.
Well,
And
is the difference to you, because this is the way that I understand it, the difference between a spirit and a ghost is that the ghost is someone who is a spirit, but something's holding them more earthbound, and they're not letting themselves go on to a higher plane. Is that how you see it too?
I would agree with that. I can see how those terms would work perfectly that way.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that there's so many missed opportunities in being caring and compassionate toward a stuck ghost.
Absolutely.
Because the word ghost has become so disconnected from being a person.
Yes.
So that's the only reason why I talk about it, because I hope to get people thinking about it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. There are plenty of paranormal investigators that definitely have been pushing that more in the last decade or so.
Isn't
like
that
realizing that they are people, as they're just people.
They're people, right? My way of explaining it is that we have 3 bodies, and this is true with almost every culture I've ever come across recognizes the 3 bodies, right? And I call them the physical body, the programming body, and the spiritual body. So physical, obviously, it's our vessel. The programming body is our mind on linear time, and then the spiritual body is the soul, the spirit. So when a person passes, the spiritual body disconnects. The spiritual body and the programming body disconnect from the physical body. So just the vessel is left behind. But when the spiritual body and the programming body together are going through the transition to the other side, that is the exact same person who was in life, because the programming body is Bo, in 2025. I live here. Like, that's the programming body. So the 2 bodies disconnect from the physical body. And what you have in that moment then would be the term ghost, right? It is the exact same person that they were without the physical body. Now, that's what gets stuck in the in-between. And it's typically out of a repetitive fear-based thought process or a unique energy that's causing them to be stuck. There's so many possibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, I could talk about it
Trauma.
for days and days.
Endless.
Endless, right? And so the transition is releasing from linear time. So the in-between is literally like a decompression chamber from linear time to nonlinear time. And as you go through these levels, there's like 12 levels and stages of the in-between. As you go through these levels, that programming body disconnects more and more and more until what you're left with is the spirit, which has the personality, it's got the soul, and it crosses over to the other side, no longer on linear time, no longer able to access emotions that require linear time. So if you run into a spirit / ghost who is angry, they're stuck.
Yep.
Because you can't have anger if you don't have linear time. So that's one way to look at it. But and for me, doing spiritual clearings was always close to my heart, because when you share energetic space, it's like somebody just moving into your house and being around you all the time, but you don't know it. you know? So all the same irritations as the extended stay guest who doesn't know when to leave.
Yeah.
All the same emotions and feelings, but you don't know that that's what's happening. So clearings are good.
I've asked this question before and I've gotten the same answer a lot. So I feel like I almost don't need to ask this anymore, but I'm going to ask you anyway, which is talking about clearings. Are there any ethical concerns about crossing over, or is that not a worry in terms of like, I guess like they're making that decision, like you're just allowing them the possibility for that to happen? What are your thoughts on that?
What do you mean? A little,
Like, so I've heard before, like this was something I I kind of agreed with, but it's been something we've talked to other guests about, which is that I've heard before was unethical to cross goes over, because it was like their decision on whether they wanted to stay or not. So like you were encroaching on their like where they wanted to be and what they wanted to do. But most of our guests that we've had on here have disagreed with that specifically and said that it was the ethical thing to cross people over to, kind of end this misery and the stuckness that they have. Do you agree with that essentially? Or is there any ethical concern?
Actually, I'll give you two different examples because I don't ethically, when I see a spirit that's stuck, it's the same thing as seeing an 8-year-old kid on a sidewalk alone, lost.
Uh-huh.
There's no point in not stopping, pulling over and going, "Hey kiddo, you all right?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are spirits that will make the decision. Let me start this way. No living human can cross someone over.
Yeah.
So it's always by the choice of the spirit. What a human can do in a physical body with the physical body limitations is they can shake things up enough that they shake the spirit out of whatever pattern is holding them. And then that spirit has the right to decide if they can move again. Think of the transition process as like an automated people mover, right? If a spirit is choosing to stay, they have put their hands on the edge, lifted up, dug their heels into the side, and they're not moving on the automatic people mover. Like near-death experiences you hear, it's just a pull, right? It's an automatic pull. A spirit has to either be affected in a negative way by something else and stopping them, in which case a person would energetically kind of loosen that up so the spirit could go where it wanted to go anyway. Those are the easiest clearings ever. You lay eyes on the situation, send love, and it's gone, right? Or a spirit themselves has their own internal fear or trauma and will hold still themselves. And in that case, if you get them thinking about bigger pictures and remembering more things instead of being focused on the trauma, that automatic people mover will start to move anyway. So it's not, I kind of shudder a little bit when someone's like, I crossed them all the way over. Well, you coach them, you hold space for them, you show up for them, you put energy toward it. But here's an interesting, there's so many different situations. Here's an interesting one. I did a clearing for a man, and he felt like he had something in his house. I show up, I tap in, and it's an older gentleman in the in between. And my first thing is, are you okay? Do you need to move on? What's going on? And the older gentleman in the spirit form looked at me and said, I'm not going anywhere. And I was like, oh, okay. Are you okay? And he was like, you don't know what you're dealing with. And I was like, could you tell me what I'm dealing with? And he was like, it's like the 37th level of some sort of organization of that intentionally stays in the in-between to do work energetically.
Interesting.
What is it? It was like the temple or the Templar or one of those groups.
The Templars?
Yeah, I think it was the Templars, and he was like a something level of something. And he
Like
goes,
the
I'm working.
Yeah.
What? Yeah,
Like
he's
the
like, I'm working
Freemasons,
here.
like the 33rd degree or whatever.
Yes, it was something like that. And I
Yeah.
went, and then the minute he said it, I was like, I'm sorry, sir. Can I put a request in, please, that you leave this man's house alone? Because you're freaking him out. And he's like, I can do that. I can do that. We're good. And then that was it. So it's not that everyone needs to cross. It's that all you need to do is ethically is show up, be present. And if the kid on the sidewalk is lost, you help them find their way.
Yeah. I guess a lot of that I heard, I mean, this has been several years back now where I was hearing this a lot. Maybe that was coming out of what you were talking about before with like ghost tourism, where if you're running, these tours at this old asylum, you don't want mediums coming in and crossing things over because then
Yeah.
your
Well,
business
I mean,
goes
there
down.
is, yeah, because then
Mhm.
they lose their livelihood, and then you're like talking about the ethics. Then you're talking about the
Then
That's
the
ethics
ethics.
of the
uh,
human side,
Yeah.
and yeah, it gets real sticky.
It does get sticky, but after, so when I first put 2 and 2 together with this concept of a human zoo, they're kind of keeping them there, kind of everything else. I was feisty and I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm going to set them free. Like that's how I started. Right. And then I started doing these clearings and I realized that it's not that you're going to clear it and it's going to be empty and they're going to go broke. In the beginning, that was my first thought too. But the
Mhm.
more I did this work, the more I realized they're holding space. The living person who owns it is holding space for a haunting experience. There are plenty
Yeah.
of spirits in the in-between who were vicious people, mean people, wanted to cause. There are plenty of people who have stopped their transition in the in-between and would love to haunt someone.
Yeah.
So these places typically go on, but they go
Yeah.
on and they continue to be haunted
Mm-hmm.
because the spirits that are wanting to do the haunting are showing up to do the haunting, and the living people coming in who want to be haunted are getting the haunting experience. It's a win-win if you think about it in those terms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that's not cool is when you hold a spirit there and you will not
Yeah.
let them go.
Yeah. I'm with you on all that. It's like
Yeah.
if it's somebody that needs help, then it's just wrong for you not to help them.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I think
If you
so
can do
too.
it, do it.
We did have a question, and I
Mhm.
think I'm assuming what the answer is because you're kind of already sharing that, but just in case. Cole had a question about the clearing. Do you use any pagan standards like tossing salt or saging the 4 points?
That's an interesting question. I don't, but that's because we are all wired differently. And it's why all the different religions are important to be here, right?
Yep.
Because we're all linked in energetically to one or the other. But I'm wired in a way that if I follow a recipe, the food's going to taste horrible. So, like, every single time I clear, just like when we talked about earlier, every time I read, I have to go in it going to my guides, tell me what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So I kind of go in more like a janitor that's under somebody else's orders and they're telling me what to clean up. And that's the way that I do it. If I get too ritual, I box myself in because I start to worry that I've done that wrong. But like one of my closest friends, when she does things in a ritual form, her intuition is just wide open. So we're all so different. So I don't personally, I go in just blank slate every time, and it's the only really way I can do it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that too. It's like ritual has its place, and for some people they can't do it without it. And that's totally fine because that's how they work.
Yeah.
But it's not for everybody. And in a lot of ways, Frosty says this all the time, you don't need the ritual, but it's just how that person believes in what they're doing.
Ritual is just the thing that makes you believe that it's possible.
Yeah.
Because our minds can't go past the concept of like, I can just manifest. But if I light this candle and I say this specific thing and I hop on my leg 3 times, then
I got my pineapple shirt on.
You know what's really funny, Frosty, is when you go in to clear a house and you pick up what's in there and then you say to the homeowner, okay, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do the clearing. And they go, okay, do we stand in a circle? Do we hold hands?
Yeah.
They want it.
And all I can say to them is you're going to be so disappointed because all I do is just sit here quietly. And I'm sorry, that's going to be really boring, but it works.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with ritual. I don't know if there's anything wrong with doing a little dance for entertainment, but you're right. Like I don't know if all that needs to exist. Well,
and some people it enhances it greatly.
yeah,
Absolutely.
because their belief goes up, like the manifestation, the ability of that manifestation. Yeah,
It
for sure.
gets
I
them
can
into
see
the
that.
groove.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, Bo, for all the people listening to us out there, where can they find more out about the Sage Method, and where can they find you out there online?
Most all of the handles are under my full name, Isabel Maxwell, or the Sage Method. So thesagemethod.com is where I have most everything.
Which
Excellent.
is for Twitch people, it's pinned at the top. For
Yep.
YouTube people, it's back in the chat. And for everybody else, it'll be down in the comment in the description box.
Yeah, we'll be down in the description box. That's thesagemethod.com. And yeah, you can go find them, click on those descriptions down below and go check out the website and find Bo and check it out. Do you have anything else going on? Anything coming up this year that you're looking forward to? Any cons or anything like that you have been hanging out and doing?
This is a very unplanned year compared to the other ones. The last 2 years have been so busy. So I don't necessarily have anything in particular other than planning. I'm in planning stages, you know?
That was the message this year. Jenny said she's not planning anything this year.
Yeah, because I saw Jen, you were like, yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It was,
It's like
isn't
I
it?
just have to feel like I just have to go with whatever is happening this
Yeah.
year and like not really push myself to plan anything out.
Yeah.
That's the message I got, and I'm just gonna listen to it.
I'm right
Yeah.
with I'm with Jenny. That's the same
There we go.
thing.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to remind all you listening out there, we do have the team. One thing we do have planned out this year is the Team
Yes.
Weird Takeover, the
That's
first
'cause
ever Team Weird Takeover.
That's because Frosty planned it.
We're going to be meeting out at Lake Shawnee Abandoned Amusement Park out in West Virginia. So if you're listening to the program, you're a member of Team Weird, so feel free to go over to witchinghourspodcast.com and you can purchase your ticket to come to the Team Weird podcast and hang out with us. We're going to be doing some investigation and some hanging out and maybe some channeling and or maybe a medium gallery. We're planning all that stuff out. What will definitely be there is pizza and tacos.
Yep.
So go buy your ticket and we will catch you guys June 7th and 8th out in Lake Shawnee, West Virginia. For all of you who are listening in another place and another time, we will see you all next time. And for everyone else who's hanging out here with us tonight in the chats, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. And thank you so much, Bo, for being a guest on the program tonight. I had a blast.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast as well. This is like, I feel like I'm hanging out with friends and I absolutely love it.
That's why Frosty was like, "Are you closer on the web?"
I know, like, at least layer 3.
Where's your light ball at?
So where are you located on the web? Like,
Yeah.
there should
Yeah,
be a
there we
Google Maps for
Can
the
I see?
spider web.
Where's Bo's light ball at? Okay. Anyway, who are we raiding to?
Ooh, the little moonling's on.
I was
Let's do
thinking
a little.
about that
Let's
too.
do the little moonling. It's been a
Okay.
while since Sheepy's on. We rated Sheepy last week. The
We
little
raid
moonling.
Sheepy
I
a
feels
lot.
like a good vibe for tonight. So
Yes.
let's do that.
Okay.
The little moonling also has my favorite emote,
The
which is
wizard, the dancing wizard.
the Gandalf, the dancing wizard with the
Yeah.
staff. Yeah,
Nice.
so we're good to go.
That's a good one.
The little. It's just me, or has she not been on for a little while?
Oh no, she's on.
Okay.
Maybe just not when you're on.
Okay. We got that rate going. Hey everybody. I think we're gonna be on Sunday night. So if you're around or you want to put it in the calendar or whatever, we're gonna do a hangout. We're gonna do a hangout. We might have a couple of surprises for hanging out. Getting ready for the 100th episode next Thursday. So
Yay.
thanks everybody. We'll see you guys later. Take care. Tomorrow night you're on, right, Jenny?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. All right. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye. And we're out.